And you realize for yourself as a woman how much work it has taken for you to stop doing certain things, but then he doesn't even look at you and acknowledge the fact that you're doing it. Yeah, you're going to be in your feelings about that. Welcome to another episode of Pursue Her podcast, where we explore real life issues through the lens of faith and personal growth. Today's episode, we're diving into the topic that many women may relate to as far as feeling unrecognized in your growth within your marriage. Now, we're going to discuss the frustrations that can arise when you feel like your husband's failing to acknowledge your areas of improvement, and we're going to offer some tips to how to navigate this challenge while continuing to have a thriving marriage. So, as a wife, you are either working on things that your husband has asked you to work on, or you are working on things that you realize within yourself or deeper issues that you know that you have to do. Say, for example, if you're going through counseling or you have a life coach, or you're going through self-awareness, or honestly, your time with the Holy Spirit, because he can reveal things to you as well and say, hey, I need you to work on this as a wife. And you're working on these different things. You're on this this journey of growing as a woman and as a wife, but you run into these different feelings when you feel unseen, as if when your husband doesn't acknowledge them, right? You're doing the best. You think you're articulating it very clearly to him that, baby, this is what I'm working on, but yet he's still finding something else that's an issue, or not acknowledging what you've done already in your growth. Now, some of those feelings that can come up with this when you're feeling unseen, or you're feeling unappreciated, or you're feeling overlooked, is you might get disappointment. So feeling like you're let down, or feeling disillusioned, the things when efforts to grow and improve within your marriage are going unnoticed. You can experience hurt. This can hurt your feelings, okay? This is a form of emotional pain or distress because of the lack of validation or the recognition. You may even begin to develop some resentment. Okay, you have these negative feelings towards your husband for not appreciating your efforts because you want him to acknowledge it, right? But he's not. So that can build up over time if we don't use some of these strategies that we're going to go over today, because you don't want that to grow, but it can be there. You may develop some emotions of insecurity, right? So you start to question yourself, like my worth and my value. Like, is it worth me doing this? Like, if I'm not doing this, or if he's always finding something else wrong, then maybe it'd be somebody else. Like, all these different things, this insecurity can develop. You can start feeling emotions of loneliness. You can feel lonely within your marriage. There are a lot of people who are married who feel lonely in their homes and in their marriages. And it could be something from this. You feeling that disconnection because you feel like he doesn't see you. You feel like he doesn't recognize you in what you're doing with your attempts of growing. Frustration definitely is the top of the iceberg when it comes to that. You can get annoyed. You can be very irritated because it seems like your husband's just not getting it. All right. It definitely will increase your desire for validation, which we're going to talk about. That validation and that affirmation that you want from your husband, and when he's not giving it to you, it just can make you feel despaired, defeated, all of those different things. But this is a real life thing that happens in marriages. And a lot of times people don't even speak up on it. Your spouse doesn't even know that you're working on certain things. Your spouse doesn't even realize that he's not recognizing those things and those different emotions. But we have to figure out ways to make sure we're communicating this. Now, I have an example. I was working with one client before. And she was sharing how she was working on how to communicate better with her husband. The goal that she said to herself was she was going to minimize the name calling and yelling. That is what she saw was a big thing to work on within their communication so their arguments could be minimized. Now, she's working on not calling them names. She's working on not yelling and those different things. But yet her husband, when they get into these heated discussions, still tells her that her communication is horrible, that she's not listening, that there's no growth, because in his mind, he really wanted her to work on not cutting him off and being a better listener, right? So here she is getting frustrated because she's like, well, I stopped calling them names. I stopped yelling. I'm doing all this other stuff. I'm working, and it's very hard for her, but her husband's not recognizing that. For one, neither one of them communicated that with each other. So you really got to stop and ask yourself, is the thing that you're working on the thing that you told your husband that you were going to work on? Is it the things that he asked you to work on? You may have thought that the name and the name calling and the yelling was the biggest deal, but to your husband, the biggest deal for him was that you were interrupting him, that you were cutting him off while he was speaking. This is that disconnect that we sometimes get in our marriages and what we're working on, because she was still doing the work. That was still something she needed to work on. But that communication between one another is something that we have to grow in our relationships, in our marriages, and to make sure that we are communicating what we need from one another, even within our self-growth, even within those aspects of how we want to grow within our marriage. This very much goes the same way, like when we look at love languages. The way that one person feels loved is different than the others. So if your love language is physical touch, your husband's love language is buying gifts, and all he does is buy you gifts and things because that's how he likes to receive love, but you rather just get a hug. Now we have a disconnect. Because you as a wife who wants to touch, you're like, you don't hug me, you don't do this. And he said, but I'm giving you gifts. He really thinks he's doing the work. All of this can be avoided by honestly talking about what the other person wants and talking about, okay, this is my thought process and this is what I want to work on. Is this something that is okay if I work on this? Is this an area you want me to work on first, or would you like me to work on something else? Okay. That is that aspect of that open communication that you have to have in your relationship. This will really help minimize these moments of when you're feeling overlooked from your efforts because your husband doesn't have any idea and you think he's just supposed to know, right? And frustration, and then you get resentment and all those other lists of emotions that I discussed earlier in this episode. So a strategy that you can have for this is one of the things that I started doing even within my marriage, because I was realizing for myself, like, I've been in this place, like, you don't even recognize my growth. You don't even recognize what I'm doing. And you realize for yourself as a woman how much work it has taken for you to stop doing certain things. But then he doesn't even look at you and acknowledge the fact that you're doing it. Yeah, you're going to be in your feelings about that. Yeah, but we can work on that. So I remember we had different situations that we were working on. And we're going to say different parts of intimacy. So I said, hey, I heard you very clearly. These are things that you said that you're trying to see improvement in. These are the 3 things that I said I'm going to work on. Okay. And I gave him the list. These are the 3 things that I think I can work on first. Are these on a high level of priority for you, for me to fix, to work on? Let's just say that. So we had that open communication where I said it. So before I went on my deep span of my personal self-worth, not self-worth, but self-journey of growing, he knew from the beginning, okay, this is what she said she's going to work on. It allowed him to see exactly what I'm focusing on. And then he provided validation in his own ways. At the end of the day, though, we'll get to validation in a minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But these are the examples that you can have. That open communication and speaking with your husband and coming together. That's how you work together, because I truly believe that there's always something that you're going to work on in your marriage. 1, because you're always growing. Every season is not the same. The way you did something in the first part of your marriage is not going to be the same way you're going to do something 10 years in, 2 years in. It doesn't matter. A couple months in, it can change because life happens. Circumstances happen. But you've got to have this communication so you can minimize the moments of feeling undervalued. Okay? That open dialogue, that is your step 1. Open dialogue. Creating that honest conversation with your husband about your feelings and what you need. Even if you are in that place right now and you can say to yourself, I don't feel like my husband is listening, or not gonna say listening, he doesn't recognize when I am doing well. He always pinpoints everything I'm doing wrong. Have you spoken to him about it? Does he even know you think that right now? No, honestly. And you can't say, well, he should just know. No, he should not just know, because you could be frustrated and mad about something else. He may not know. So be able to talk to him in a constructive manner, right? Focusing on expressing your emotions and not to assign blame to him, to say, you this. This is a time when we use our I statements. I get frustrated because I am working on these areas within our marriage, which I know are concerns. And at times I don't think you acknowledge it. So it makes me feel as if I get defeated, or I feel frustrated, or I feel like I want to give up. What is something we could do to work on that? Because I want to continue to work on these areas as a wife, but I also do want some form of recognition so that you can see it, so that you know I'm listening. What can I do to show you that I am listening to your concerns? That's just an example of ways of you can say it, but having that conversation with them instead of now you blowing up on each other in the next argument, and you like, you don't see none of the stuff that I do, and you did, and he like, what are you talking about? And then it just turns into a whole nother thing. Open dialogue, having that communication, and working on a plan together of making it better. Number 2, self-validation. We got to get to the point of finding validation from within when we recognize our growth and our worth, regardless of external acknowledgement. Be happy with yourself that if your goal was to stop cussing out your husband, and whether he recognizes or not and pinpoints the fact that you interrupt him when he speaks, way to go for you, because you know still at the end of the day you don't need to be cussing out your husband. Self-validation for the work that it took you, because you know you cuss out everybody else, but you've gotten to a place where you stop cussing out your husband. Yo, that is good. Let that be enough too at times. Because if you have and can increase the positiveness of self-validation, nobody can take that away from you. Because now your self-growth and what you're doing is based off of you. It's not based on nobody else. This is a really good thought process when it comes to being a wife whose focus is to please God. Allow him to be the source of your validation as well. When God tells you to work on different things and God says, good job, girl. Good job. Because I'm trying to be a wife whose actions please God. My husband reaps the benefits of me being a wife whose action please God, because if it pleases God, then it's going to please you. Because as your wife, God's going to tell me the things I need to work on for the guy, the man that I believe God created me for. That's how this whole thing works. This is whole triangle, right? With God and husband and wife, and how we all come together. That's that whole concept, that whole part that we have to work on, and we got to be intentional about. My validation comes from God. My validation comes from within. Okay? I'm not saying that you're supposed to just walk around and your husband should never acknowledge, hey, good job, because that's just, being nice and kind, but working on those different things, but allow yourself validation. So say, for example, if your husband is not recognizing something that you know you needed to work on, that doesn't mean you get to just quit though and say, I'm just not going to do it no more because he don't recognize it no way. No, you still need to do what's right, because you're doing right what's in the eyes of God. And you're also doing what's right because every little step of improvement that you make ultimately still benefits your marriage in the long run. Okay, so don't just say, I'm just not going to do it no more. He don't care. No way. He not listening. He not paying attention to it. I'm just going to stop. No, because it still wasn't fruitful for your marriage for you to be cussing him out, or you sneaking and spending money behind his back. Whatever y'all thing is, or whatever the thing is that you have to work on, be mindful that you still need to work on it. And the third step that I want you to focus on is focus on gratitude. Advocate for cultivating gratitude within your marriage by acknowledging and appreciating the positive aspects of your relationship. It's really hard to focus on the things that your husband's not doing, but what are the things that he is doing? What you focus on is what will magnify. Yeah, there's some areas that you need to work on. There's some things you want him to do differently. Cool. We get it. We understand that. That is something that'll be worked on. But what is he doing well? What are the areas where he has acknowledged you? Finding that gratitude helps you stick in this fight, all right? Stick in this journey. I'll say that better, not fight. Stick in this journey of marriage, because it changes your perspective. Your perspective and whatever you see is going to be the indicator of how you operate. So if you focus on having gratitude, you can have gratitude, but also have these expectations and communicate those expectations of things that you want and desire. But in the meantime, God, I still thank you that my husband is doing this. I am thankful that he acknowledged his growth with this thing. I'm thankful that we're able to even talk about this. Find that gratitude in your marriage, in your relationship, and it will help. Okay? So, as we end today's episode, quick, straight to the point, remember that navigating the feelings of unrecognized growth in marriage is a journey, and it requires patience, understanding, and perseverance. We don't quit. But we're going to still work on these things. We're going to implement these tips. Open dialogue. focusing on self-validation, and focusing on gratitude. Okay, this can help you overcome your feelings of feeling defeated and frustrated and help you to continue on the road of creating a thriving marriage that's rooted in love and mutual respect. All right, so until next time, I want you to continue to pursue her, being heroic, empowered, and resilient as a wife. Take care.